Hey, Ashley.
Hey, Stacy, how are you?
I'm swell. How you doing?
Pretty good. Not too bad.
What'd you learn today?
What I learned today, well, did you know that giraffes are 30 times more likely to get hit by lightning than people?
Logistically, that makes sense. Doesn't it tend to strike the thing that's closest to?
And they wear those metal hats.
Hmm.
Mhm. Yeah, there's only 5 well-documented lightning strikes on giraffes between 96 and 2010. But because of the population, there's only 140,000 giraffes, which is also a fun fact. There's not that many giraffes. So it's like 30 times the equivalent fatality rate for humans. But they're outside, they can't hide under a tree. They can't, what's the other advice? Get in your car, go near rubber,
Hmm. Stick your head in the sand?
stick your head in the sand. No,
Or
because
like
then,
us ostriches?
no,
Hmm.
because their peaches would be getting struck by lightning. They're still pretty high up.
It's really interesting.
That's what I learned today. Hey, let's get this episode started.
This is the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
They call me crazy cause I'm facing all my giants. They try to scare me into thinking I can fight it. They tell me I should never even think of trying. But that's just me, I'm gonna live out in defiance.
Welcome, Alphas. Hey, our guest today is Army veteran Bryan Adams, who currently serves as the Assistant Director in the Rutgers University Office of Veteran and Military Programs and Services. But before we get into that, what do we got for Troll Patrol, Stacy?
I tell you what, veteran Robert James wrote in and he said, I have a real life which is so busy, even at the age of 78, and it doesn't leave me much free time. I like a sea story as much as the next guy, and I admit to having a few Vietnam era photos hanging on my wall at home. But that is a very distant memory, and I don't normally think much about it. I'm certainly not going to spend 5 to 6 nights a week reliving the past. The president is simply too interesting to me. Well, Mr. James, couldn't agree more. I am also a live in the now kind of person, and I would say that that's the main reason why I volunteer within the veteran community, because they need us now to help. So while you may not have a lot of time to sit there and exchange good old day stories, I don't blame you. But I'll tell you what, if you're active at 78, make some time to volunteer at your American Legion post. Ashley.
I don't really think, he's not really trolling here, is he? I think he's more bragging.
Yeah, I would say 78 and still active with not a lot of spare time. I would say that's bragging, yes.
Like, I'm busy. I run 3 companies. My investments are doing great. Yeah, so I don't think he's trolling here. I think he's just kind of like, hey, I'm living in the moment. Maybe he's doing a lot of meditating. He's doing a lot of goat yoga, and I'm here for it. Good work, Robert. Okay, Alphas, we'll be back for OChat 30 with Bryan Adams right after the break.
The American Legion and WellCare are partnering to give our veterans more. WellCare's Medicare Advantage plans work alongside your VA benefits, and that always means you get even more of the benefits and support you need. But it can also mean a brighter smile, clearer vision, or sharper hearing. Find out what more means for you. Visit wellcareforveterans.com today or call 844-917-1165. Ohana Health Plan, a plan offered by WellCare Health Insurance of Arizona, Inc. WellCare is the Medicare brand for Centene Corporation, an HMO, PPO, PFFS, PDP plan with a Medicare contract and is an approved Part D sponsor. Our DSMP plans have a contract with the state Medicaid program. Enrollment in our plans depends on contract renewal. Arizona DSMP plans, contract services are funded in part under contract with the state of Arizona. New Mexico, dual eligible special needs plans members. As a WellCare by All Well DSMP member, you have coverage from both Medicare and Medicaid. Medicaid services are funded in part by the state of New Mexico. New Mexico Medicaid benefits may be limited to payment of Medicare premiums for some members. Notice, TennCare is not responsible for payment for these benefits, except for appropriate cost sharing amounts. TennCare is not responsible for guaranteeing the availability or quality of these benefits. Any benefits above and beyond traditional Medicare benefits are applicable to WellCare Medicare Advantage only and do not indicate increased Medicaid benefits. Indiana DSMP prospective enrollees. For detailed information about Indiana Medicaid benefits, please visit the Medicaid website at www.in.gov/Medicaid. WellCare by All Well, HMO, and HMO SMP includes products that are underwritten by Superior Health Plan, Inc. and Superior Health Plan Community Solutions, Inc. WellCare, HMO, and HMO SMP includes products that are underwritten by WellCare of Texas, Inc., WellCare National Health Insurance Company, and Select Care of Texas, Inc.
All right, Alphas, I hope you had a great break. I hope you did something nice for yourself. I'm excited to talk to our guest today. He is an Army veteran and a Pat Tillman Scholar, professional speaker. Please welcome Bryan Adams. Hi, Bryan.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on board. How's your week been?
Good.
Good.
I have a 9-month-old daughter, so time is kind of moves differently right now.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Fast and
kind
slow.
of they all blend together.
Are you falling asleep without noticing? You're just kind of sitting, staring off into space.
Yeah, it's like, those times where you don't know if you napped for 2 minutes or 2 hours.
Take it when you can get it. Well, welcome to the show, Bryan. Thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come on here.
Yeah. Fun fact. I was getting out around the time IAVA dropped that PSA that featured you walking along in the empty streets. I gotta say, and I will admit this, not to everybody, but only the alphas. I did get a little misty-eyed watching it for the first time, because I related so much to that. And honestly, I didn't realize that it was honestly, I should have realized that it was a real soldier, a real life veteran. That was you. I know it's been like 15 years, but how did that all come about? Why did it happen?
Yeah, actually, the other person in that PSA was a soldier also. But that was actually, I was a student at Rutgers at the time, and IAVA was kind of just getting rolling, I would say. And they sent out an email, and the email was pretty much just asking for veterans in the area. It was a casting call essentially. And I didn't really think much of it, but one of my good friends at the time was like, you should go. Like you should go and try it. And so I was like, okay. So I went up to Manhattan, and we were in like the 20th floor of a building, and I go in there, and there's all these people in there with their headshots and their like modeling portfolios, and they're like rehearsing lines and stuff. And I was just like, oh, this is probably not gonna go well. So when I went in there, they were like, tell me about yourself a little bit. And I was like, I'm a veteran. I'm at Rutgers. We're trying to advocate. At the time we were actually organizing and hosting a congressional debate in our state for veterans of our generation, because we felt that there was like no conversation. And so I was telling them all about it. And I just went through the casting call, and they were like, okay, we'll let you know. And, I went home, and they called me the next day, and they were like, can you come up for a fitting? And they're like, can you bring your uniform? And so I went up there the next day. And this time there was only probably 20 people, and they were all veterans, and they all had their uniforms. And I was like, okay, now, like, I think I have a better shot. And, they would go in, come out 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And then I went into the room, and I was in there for like 45 minutes, and they were like, stand, do this, and look this way, and walk this way, and talk, and there was like 15 people in there. And I got out, and they were like, oh, are you hungry? And I was like, yeah. And like, I'm like eating food, and there's like a glass door, where all the other people are waiting, and they're all just kind of looking at me. And they're like, if we picked you, would you be able to film this weekend? And I was like, absolutely. And so I got on the train, and I was heading home, and Paul Rykoff, who was the founder and CEO of IAVA, he actually called me, and he was like, hey, you got it. Can you come back up like tonight? I went home, got my stuff, went back up, and we started filming like the next day. And it was like 3 days of filming, all throughout the city. Like they physically blocked off those streets. They had like 30 people on headsets and, trucks, and it was pretty amazing. And yeah, the other guy, Todd Bowers, is his name. He was one of the crucial like early members of IAVA, and he was a Marine. He's a Purple Heart veteran also. And it took about 4 months to edit it, and they launched it on Veterans Day in 2008, and it was just like a whirlwind. I mean, I had like every one of my friends from my unit like calling me and texting me like, dude, are you in a commercial? Like it was just so it just like blew my world open pretty much. I did a bunch of interviews like on television and with newspapers and magazines, and I'm really just fortunate that I had that opportunity, and they trusted and believed in me, to kind of be the face of that campaign. I also agree that it was very powerful, not just that I was in it. I think they really did an excellent job with hitting on that, feeling that people get, that feeling of isolation and, not being able to connect and just feeling like you're, kind of lost when you get out. And, it definitely resonated with a lot of people, myself included.
Was it all positive that came from it? Did you have any negativity, anything bad, or was it all great?
No, it was all positive. I'm not sure how people would kind of attack that. And if they did, like I wouldn't really acknowledge them
Right? It's like it
anyway.
doesn't difference make. Yeah.
It's like where, do you hate veterans that are, coming back? Like overall, it was just people were happy. I feel like that our issues were kind of being highlighted. 2008 was still pretty early, I would say. If I had to comment on that, like, I got out in 2005, and like no one had any idea really what veterans were dealing with and living with. And like when we were on campus, it was like no one had any idea like what to do with us and what kind of we were experiencing. So I think like having that kind of reach where, they did partner with the Ad Council, and like it was on national television, like I think it really did help like the community, overall.
Mhm.
Where were you like that was quite soon after you got out of service, if you think about it in the succession of things. Where were you at mentally? Where were you at in your own like self-discovery and transition from service into the civilian world? And talk to me a little bit about what was that commercial so much of a reflection of your own personal experience, and how did you relate to it?
Yeah, absolutely. I joined when I was 18. I went into the infantry. I got into my unit sniper section. That's what I deployed to Iraq as. I was deployed at 19. I turned 20 over there, and then I got out at 21, 6 months after my deployment. And, I really didn't know anything. All I really knew was like I wanted to get out. And, I didn't have a plan really. When I got out, pretty much all my friends they were already graduating college. They were, starting their careers, they were getting married. And I just like felt behind. I felt like no one could really understand, what I just experienced. Even like my own family. Like I tried to not talk about details. I try to not really tell them like things that happen or things, that was experiencing. It just leads you to a place where you are just very like isolated. Um, you know, you go from being in a community where, everyone lives together, you all work together. You've been through these incredibly stressful and challenging experiences, traumatic experiences, and you form these intense bonds, and then when your service is up, you're just kind of scattered. Like you're just sent back to, wherever you were from. And, my parents were getting divorced at the time. It was just like, I was feeling like I made a mistake. I was like, I should have just stayed in, because like, what the hell am I gonna do now? The only jobs like I could get were like security or like, join the police force or a firefighter. But I just didn't want to like put myself in those situations again where I would, possibly have to use my gun or have one used on me, or, it was just something I was trying to avoid. And so, I was talking to my buddy, a guy that I served with, and he was like, I'm trying to go to school. He's like, I'm looking for a roommate. And I was like, all right, I'll try it. And I dropped everything and I moved to Massachusetts. I started going to school up there because it was free. In-state was free for veterans at the time. So, I used my Montgomery GI Bill. I lived up there for a couple years. And then, when I was up there, I was interacting with the VA system for the first time, really. And, I was in there one day and I was not having a good day. And, I was kind of angry, and they were saying like I wouldn't get an appointment for like 90 days. And I was kind of like, and I was talking to the woman that worked there, and I was just kind of venting. And she was like, you're a Purple Heart vet. She's like, there might be some things that you're kind of experiencing, so some residual, issues. And I was just like, whoa, well, what do you mean? Like my leg hurts, that's why I'm here. I have to get these checkups. And she was like, no, I don't mean like physical. And she kind of talked to me about PTSD and gave me a lot of information. And, it really wasn't until that point in my life where I kind of put two and two together, where I was like, maybe there's something else going on. And, it was around that time where I kind of accepted it and I started going to treatment. And, I eventually got to a point where, I felt like I was able to kind of take on more responsibility and try to, give it another go. And, I moved back home and I started going to Rutgers, and I immediately linked up with a lot of veterans of our generation, when I was at school. And we ended up forming the first student group in the state for our generation of vets. We started to advocate heavily, at the university for better services. And, it was like right at that point where, this commercial came into my life. And so, I was kind of already on a mission at that point. And it gave, me the opportunity to try to further help like that mission. And so, it was very personal for me. I felt exactly that way. It's very hard to, go through those experiences and live that life and then try to explain that to somebody who is only really getting their information from like the news or, things they read. It's almost impossible, to try to translate the whole picture, just everything, like the military culture, the impact of the culture, the deployments, the, insane stress you're under, and, lack of support and lack of just people understanding is just, it's tough. It's a tough, tough experience. And so, I felt like I lived that. And so I really could see, what they were going for. And, I'm glad that I was able to be a part of it.
Yeah. Do you feel like at the person that went into the PTSD treatment started talking about it and going through that was different than the person that came out of the treatment at the end?
Yeah, absolutely. I was it was like it gave me a set of tools
Hmm.
and education, I feel like, which was the most important part. It was like that missing piece, where it's like you just something's doesn't feel right, and like things are affecting you, and you don't want it, you don't want to be that way. You don't want to feel that way, you don't want to act that way. There's a lot of shame and guilt associated with mental health disorders, and I was not coping with it in a healthy way at all. I was still young, I was drinking, I was going out, it was like I just didn't really have any clue of as far as like how something like that could affect you in such a negative way. And so like going through that treatment, like that's what I really learned. It was like, okay, basically funneling every single decision I make, every experience I have through the lens of like, how is this going to affect my mental health? Is this going to positively affect me? Is this going to negatively affect me? Am I coping? Am I dealing with this in the right way? Like, am I framing this situation in the right way? And so just having that extra like tool set of education where it's like, okay, like it's probably this, and I should, you know, go out and go work out, or go, for a hike, or go do something else, like to kind of get myself back down to baseline level, and then, move on to whatever I, have to do that day, or like dealing with relationships, and dealing with like a job, and, it's like all these different things like that it affects. And, it's like almost like you have to retrain yourself.
Hmm.
You have to retrain yourself to become a functioning like civilian adult.
Well, you're doing it now. You got it. You're now an adult that's raising a little baby. So
Yeah.
crushing it.
So I went to Syracuse University, and that was actually while I was still on active duty. And of course, that was after my first tour in Iraq. And it was definitely difficult to, adjust to undergrads, the age difference, the fact that they'd never really lived outside of their little hometowns, and their sphere of experience was limited to what they'd been exposed to up until the age of 18. And so there was a complete disconnect. And it sounds to me like that was in part, I mean, aside from, being wounded in combat and then coming home, feeling isolated, lonely, turning to alcohol, working through post-traumatic stress and learning how you're going to live your life with it, healthy in a healthy way. And then above and beyond that, you're trying to get through higher education, which in itself is stressful. But now that you're the assistant director of the veteran and military programs and services at Rutgers, I wonder, how have you used your own personal experiences to help those who are going to be facing the same thing you did? What are some of the unique challenges they're facing, and how are you helping them overcome that?
Yeah, I feel like from a personal level, it's like I'm looking at myself, a younger version of myself. And so, it's easier, I would say, to recognize, things that might be affecting a student other than, the pure academic stress of it. And so from that perspective, like my personal experiences really do help. And also just trying to make that connection with somebody, letting someone know that like we really do understand, what you're experiencing, and that we are like truly here to help you and try to get you connected to, services. Because yeah, it is tough, especially at Rutgers is a tier one research school. It's very academically demanding, and a lot of veterans, like they try to reverse engineer their life. So they're like, okay, like I know I want to be an engineer, and I know I need this, engineering degree, but I've never taken a math course, and I've you know, I'm not great at math. And so sometimes, you have to have those conversations with people, that maybe that's pathway is not going to work for you, and sometimes those are like tough conversations to have. Um, just being like coming from that culture where it's like, no, like I'm just going to will my way through everything, and sometimes like you can't do that when it's like very complex, like academic situations, like without a high level of support. So like stepping in and kind of figuring out like what we can do to try to make that reality happen for them, whether it's tutoring or, getting them connected to resources that will, kind of make that dream come true. Um, that's one of the things that we, or even, just diverting them, like, you might have to pick a different major, like things like that, that you encounter. But, we have people from all over the country, and, these people, they want to get a degree. They want to better their lives and elevate themselves and their families. And, most of them are very mission oriented mindset, very hardworking. A lot of them treat it like it's a full-time job, you know, especially with the GI Bill, the generous benefits, allow you to do that type of thing. And so, there's also that community aspect of it, where if some people have served for 10 years, 20 years, they did a whole career, and now, they get out of the military and they realize that, okay, like that credentialing or my experiences from the Army or the Marines or Navy, that might not lead me to, a position or a career where I'll have the comparable level of, responsibility and financial compensation. And so they have to retrain essentially to get this civilian credentialing, which is, a degree of some sort. It's if it's a master's or, PhD or it's just a whole different like system essentially of credentialing. And so, that becomes like a challenge in itself when you've been in that long and you're coming into a university like Rutgers. It's massive, it's, decentralized, it's in the Northeast, and if you don't have like a good support network and you don't have some sense of community, I feel like you can very quickly give up. And you start having those thoughts like maybe this isn't the right option, and maybe I should be doing something else. And it's like making sure that we're able to kind of provide that. We have a physical house on the university. We have like a very extensive work study program. We do a lot of just events. We have multiple staff members where we're able to provide a wide variety of services and connecting people with services, and then, following up and ensuring that they're actually like utilizing them. And so I think, like from my perspective, having that exist at a university can make like the difference in them graduating or not. I can't even remember, dozens of people have told me like I wouldn't have made it without this office. I wouldn't be graduating. I wouldn't be doing this without you guys. And so like just hearing that and like seeing the tangible like results of our actions and the fact that like we are kind of helping these people, that, is pretty much everything for me. So, I just take it very seriously and very personally. And, I
Yeah.
think every university should have services. It's a shame that they all don't.
Yeah. I mean, just to be able to take a look at what you've done, you were a student and then you said, hey, let's make this happen. Let's get these veteran support service programs going at Rutgers. And then they hired you. You helped bring it up to number 2 in the whole country, according to the Military Times. So, I mean, I would love to see it at all universities. I lived in New Jersey for a while, so I know that it's a military friendly kind of place. You know, we got there's a lot of, I mean, Fort Dix is there, and McGuire Air Force Base, and you know, a pretty big installations. Lakehurst for the Navy, but just the ability to have that sort of kind of mentality to go, hey, I need help, therefore, you know, other people could benefit from this too, and how can we make it better for the current and next generations?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the, you know, that's the service mentality. You know, when you're in the military, it's, you know, it's not about you, it's about the mission. You know, it's about the Army. For me, it's about, you know, helping your fellow servicemen. And, you know, it's amazing what you can accomplish, you know, when you have a dedicated group of people, you know, that are willing to take that effort and to make things happen. You know, I'm not like, that wasn't a solo mission for me. You know, we had a very strong student group. You know, we had a lot of support in the state, you know, from alumni at the university, from just people through, you know, donors and just veterans that were like, what can we do? You know, how can we help you? And I think like that's that, you know, such a valuable mentality and valuable, like, intangible asset that, you know, veterans and military members bring to any, you know, organization or any entity. You know, I think that's something that can't necessarily be like taught. You know, it's something you have to like learn and live through and experience, and then, you know, to really truly understand that. You know, and that's like, you know, one of the reasons I feel like it's also one of the reasons that make the transition difficult, you know, is that, you know, you go, like I mentioned earlier, like you have these bonds and you're in a position where you know, you are important. Like you have very real responsibility, you know, very real mission. You know, everything is so clear and it's so defined, you know, and you're just kind of part of this thing. And then, you know, when you get out, it's like you don't have any of that anymore, you know, and it's like you're almost like lost, like what do I do now, you know?
Yeah, that's the hardest time. Well, Stacy, do you have anything else to ask? Anything else you want to add to or talk to Bryan about?
Well, Bryan, I just want to say thank you for taking the time today. And I'm glad you made it through that experience back then. I'm glad you're making it through now. And I'm glad you're helping others find their way through that same uncertain, uneasy transition. And I hope you continue to touch their lives and do all the best, and let us know how we can support you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do a lot of stuff with the Legion in the state. You know, we're open to work with anyone that is willing to help veterans.
Heck
So
yeah.
we appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity.
I love it. And I know you don't really do social media, which is great. I think that's brilliant for your mental health. But if people want to go check out the veterans program at Rutgers, I think it's veterans.rutgers.edu. And so go check that out. See if you want to head up to Jersey. Go.
Yeah, if you want to go to school up there, you can talk to me personally.
Go.
You know, and you know, I'm also a Tillman Scholar, so that's something that I, you know, I'm very proud of. And if you're on the fence about it, definitely apply.
There you
know,
go.
it's an amazing organization, an amazing network, and it'll change your life.
PatTillmanFoundation.org. I love it. Bryan loves it. Stacy, do you love it?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We're all in. All right. PatTillmanFoundation.org, veterans.rutgers.edu. Bryan, thank you so much for hanging out with us today and chatting with us. And I hope that everything goes well for you. And if we can help you in any way, just let us know.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, Alphas. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll be right back after the break.
The American Legion is raising awareness about PTSD and veteran suicide by offering hope, camaraderie, and support.
Be the one to help end veteran suicide.
Be the one to save one veteran.
Be the one to ask a veteran in your life how they're doing.
Be the one to reach out when a veteran is struggling.
Go to betheone.org and help the American Legion end veteran suicide.
Will you be the one?
Welcome back, Alphas. We hope you enjoyed the break. Now it's time for some scuttlebutt. Stacey, what do you got?
In a world. Have you heard the familiar movie trailer phrase, in a world, Ashley?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did you know that the voice came from an Army veteran by the name of Don LaFonte? Or LaFonte? Not really sure how you pronounce that.
LaFontaine. Yeah, I do know. He's very famous in the voice acting world.
Yeah.
He used to drive around in his car with he had one of the first car phones so that he could go from place to place because he was so in demand for his voice.
Like one of the brick.
Yeah.
Kind of,
like
well, I could see
like limo.
That's crazy. But before he ended up in Hollywood, he was serving in the Army band and the Army chorus. He moved to New York. He did some radio spots for the Dr. Strangelove show. And from there, he moved to Hollywood and he became a voiceover artist, lending his voice to thousands of movie trailers. Fun fact, LaFontaine was also the voice intro for a series of clever Geico ads that were launched in 2006. So if you don't know him from In a World, you probably know him from Geico. After LaFontaine passed away in 2008, most movie trailers moved away from voiceovers. They became passé. You know, they no longer had the voice of the Thunder Throat. So now they really lean on just snippets from movies, and it's a lot less dramatic and a lot less fun without Mr. LaFontaine. So, Ashley, do you do voiceover work?
I do voiceover work. If you go to my website, you can hear my voiceover demo reel, which is an interesting mix of things. But yeah, so I studied, I had voiceover acting coaches. There's conferences for voiceover acting that I've been to. And that's fun because you get to meet the people that do like Porky Pig. I got voiceover, like Mean Girl. I got shamed.
Oh,
Voiceover acting conference.
what does that look like?
It was because it's really hard to go up at the end of a sentence for a question. We don't always go up at the end of a sentence.
We don't go up?
Yeah, see, that's what they wanted me to do. And I was like, no, that's not how I ask questions. Anyway, they shamed me. They made fun of me when they were only like 2 feet away with me and the guy that voices Porky Pig. And then I just called them out on it. So just getting into fights.
We said, well, I'm not going to do that anymore.
What was that?
That's my best voiceover. I'm doing my voiceovers. I'm no actor.
That was funny because
does Ashley have what it takes to be the next Thunder Throat for Hollywood? I think so. Let's make that happen.
Yeah, in a world where Ashley can they didn't have women that did that particular point, but there's actually really good voiceover acting movies too that you can check out. But yeah, so hey, you got voiceover acting work? Hire Ashley Gutermuth Guttermouth, however you pronounce my last name. Let's see. Well, hey, Stacey, it's Valentine's Day tomorrow.
Nah, I
No.
don't. You celebrate?
Not doing it. Do I? No. Love? What? I do have a Legion love story that's truer than the red, white, and blue. Did you know that the current leaders of the American Legion family in Utah are actually, family?
Oh.
Let's hope that this goes in a positive direction. Back in June, Air National Guard veteran Ninzel Rasmussen was elected department commander. At the same convention, Ninzel's husband, Mike, was the first male auxiliary member to be elected as a department president. Serving together to lead the Utah American Legion family is a special opportunity for the couple. For me, it was a very special experience being a female veteran and having a supportive spouse, Ninzel said. And honestly, Mike has always been a supportive spouse. He's always supported me as a veteran. So that was a pretty special experience to stand side by side as a husband and wife and know we're both in complete support of one another in what we do with the American Legion family. What do you think about this power couple?
I think that's pretty cool. I mean, I live in a house where we try to have like a little bit of separate between work and volunteerism and hobbies. But hey, some couples just like to spend a lot of time with each other. And if they want to go out there and lead the Legion post on both sides, more power to them. And that is a true power couple.
I love it. My husband is the vice president of my company, and he'll never get promoted. So I can throw that in his face. My parents worked together. They spent all their time together, and I can tell you they're very much divorced. So protect your relationship. Be careful with that. Stacey, your family volunteered.
Volunteer?
Like, you said that they separated their time together and they had like their volunteer opportunities. They separated that. Are you telling me that your family volunteered?
Yeah, of course. We volunteer for a lot of things in this house.
We
try to volunteer in different activities so that we have something to talk about later. Because if we're both at the same activity all the time, then it just gets really boring. And my husband likes to be the guy to walk around with the clipboard, instruct what to do, and we don't always lead the same way, and I don't take orders very well. So
when I was growing up, my dad's volunteer opportunity was he would take me to work on a Saturday, and then we would put eggs and fish inside the bottom rack of the toolbox of the guy that he was fighting with. So I guess that's a volunteer opportunity. But there was, like, I didn't get volunteer hours for it.
But you were, helping out. That seems good. Ashley, are you claustrophobic by chance?
Are you threatening me?
Well, no, but if you were looking to be a submariner or the earliest type, maybe around the Revolution, you would probably be pretty claustrophobic regardless.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Who wants to be on the forefront of that? Who wants to, at the early days, put me in the ocean inside a tiny little rocket?
Yeah. Basically a bobbing egg. It was no taller than 6 feet, about 3 foot wide-ish, sitting on what amounts to like a bar stool. And you're surrounded by pipes and all that good stuff, and a lot of metal doohickeys that I don't know what they are. But anyway, yeah. So the 6 feet wasn't necessarily entirely your headspace, because like 3 foot down, you're sitting on what is basically your ability to sink yourself in the water or raise up. All of you Navy people out there are probably like, it's called ballast or buoyancy or something like that. But anyway, so in 1775, the first submarine was made of wood and tar. Can you imagine? The little death contraption was called the Turtle, and it launched into action during the Revolutionary War at 11 p.m. on September 7, 1776. Of course, it was piloted by an enlisted person, because we're expendable, but Ezra Lee pedaled his ass off, but never exceeded miles higher than 3 miles an hour. So he was speeding, but it was because of strong currents, and it took him 2 hours just to cross the harbor. On another side note, he was high as a kite because he only had 20 minutes of air when he started. 2 hours later, he was struggling on the bike for about 2 hours, panting from his efforts and exhaling a euphoric amount of carbon monoxide, slowly asphyxiating himself. Anyway, by the time he reached his destination, he was so ridden down by carbon monoxide. When he attempted to drill a hole into the hull of the Majesty's ship, he found out that they had actually lined the bottom of the ship with some copper, and so he couldn't even pierce the hull. Damn. So attack on the Eagle, which was Her Majesty's ship, the Eagle, was a big goose egg. However, the Turtle's designer, David Bushnell, we should give a shout out to that guy, inspired other engineers to continue and develop submersibles leading up to today's modern U.S. Navy submarines, which we celebrate today. So Ashley, what do you think? Could you bob in the ocean for 2 hours?
I could definitely bob. Do they still use the bicycle system today for modern day submarines?
Yeah, a bunch of those guys on the nuke sub, they will
got those big thighs. That's what I said. Whenever I meet a submariner, I'm like, you got big thighs. Also, I said submariner. Some people say submariner, some say submariner. And I've literally asked people in that job field, what do you want me to say? And they'll say, well, you call us bubbleheads. We like that. And then I'll say submariner. No, we're not sub anything. So call us submariners. They cannot decide. So if you just tell me what to call you, I will call you whatever you want. Happy to do it.
No, my hands in the air, because I've had the same conversation with submariners, submariners, and cyclists the world over. They all want to be called something else. But I will say this: you talk about sub power in modern day Navy. I envision the gym on a submarine is basically full of bicycles, and all of the sailors are there pedaling their asses off, and the Peloton instructor from New York is streaming in live, and they are making that sub go places we cannot imagine. Go Peloton.
God bless you, one and all. Anybody that is willing to get on a submarine, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You are my shout out for the week. Anyone that has ever gone on a submarine, even to visit at a museum, I salute you. Hey, everybody, don't forget, you can subscribe to this podcast. You can subscribe to the podcast, our newsletter. You can send us mail, guest recommendations, recipes. We want to hear them. Go to legion.org/Tango Alpha Lima. Hey, Alphas. We'll see you next week.